Hello, everyone. I am Sakshi Sundrani, the faculty for ethics at Vajiram and Ravi. Joining me today is ATLA THARUN TEJA, rank 123 this year. So, congratulations and thank you for connecting with us today, Tharun.
Thank you for having me, ma'am.
Tharun, you had a rank 770 last year itself. And this year itself, this was your fifth attempt and you've gotten rank 123. Along with that, you have a great score of 830 in mains itself. So again, congratulations on that, first of all. We'll get into details of that and how you could make that possible. But before that, let us get into the academic journey that you had and when did you give your first attempt? What was the motivation behind sitting for this exam? If you could share that with us briefly.
Ma'am, I had completed my 10th standard in St. Gabriel's in Warangal. I had done my intermediate in Hyderabad, and my BTech was in computer science engineering in IIT Bombay. I had completed it in 2021. And from 2021, I had been part of UPSC journey. But for me, understanding the preparation and starting the prep was took a little time to start. And I believe my first proper attempt was in 2023. So that was my journey, ma'am, primarily. And coming to my motivation was that I wanted to have a larger platform to reach out to more people now. So I believe that civil services will provide me that opportunity, and that was the primary motivation.
Tarun, you come from IIT Bombay, right? What is this IIT Bombay or IITians and them making it to the final list link? I want to know because I see many toppers in the final list every year are from IITs. Is there some undue advantage that you guys are getting into this exam, or how does it help in getting through a good rank in this exam coming from IIT itself?
Ma'am, for me, the rank list is holistic. Like there are many people coming from IITs, many people from various backgrounds. So IITians, I believe, get more famous because of their past history in IIT. But at the same time, ma'am, I believe that IITians have this alumni network where they might be able to contact the previous UPSC rankers, maybe. So that might be an advantage, I guess, but I believe it is more holistic, ma'am.
So that alumni network also must be helping you in case of figuring out where to get started. Most people actually first two attempts spend, figuring out what they have to do with this exam in the first place. That and plus, having prepared for IIT, I think that gives you an undue advantage of already having sat for a powerful exam, for powerful competitive exam yourself. So you have an idea on how to face competitive exams, how to strategize, and how to prepare. I think that is something that adds to your preparation, right?
Probably, ma'am, that might be a case too.
Yeah. Okay. So coming to your attempts. So what was it that you were missing in your previous attempts before the fourth attempt when you finally got an All India rank 770? And before that, what were the challenges that you were facing in getting into the final list?
Ma'am, for me, the primary issue was completing the paper in the 3 hours, particularly in main. Prelims, I qualified for forest in 23, 24, and 25. So prelims was a little easier for me. But coming to mains, completing the paper and understanding the demand of the question in the lesser time has been an issue, ma'am. And for me to get used to the speed of writing and at the same time answer the question as per the demand, and particularly maths too. Having in maths, having practice more improves marks, ma'am, and also confidence in writing the exam. So for me, that was a major reason for understanding in which attempt what went wrong.
Before coming to mains, I think you were very confident with your prelims and you were able to clear, I think, after your first attempt, all the subsequent prelims. So, what was your strategy of ensuring that you get to sit in the mains every year?
Ma'am, for me, CSAT was a bit easier, ma'am, coming from a maths background. So CSAT for that reason, CSAT was not in the equation very much. But coming to GS papers, I used to practice a lot, giving various open tests, giving various full length tests. And I used to write every Sunday a full length in the past, in the 2 weeks that run up to prelims. I used to write it, and I used to make sure that I will be above 90%. That was the focus always. And irrespective of the paper, whether it be tough, easy, or the normal amount of toughness, I wanted to be in the 90%. And I used to understand where I'm going wrong and what cases I'm doing that are leading to more negative marks. So I used to understand myself with respect to every exam, and after that, again, I used to work in the next exam. So that was a dynamic approach that I followed.
Okay, so you were strategizing in terms of what was going wrong with respect to each test. And so you were working on those parameters test after test, right? And now coming to mains, this year you have 830 in mains, Tarun. I think it is a big, big achievement itself. Also, not to forget that you had maths as your optional. Now, maths itself is a very lengthy and a daunting optional. So how did you take out time? Because I've seen most of the people who have maths optional, they just find time to do the basic, do basics with the GS and just get done with it sometimes. So how were you able to manage? And also you have a brilliant score in GS as well. So how did you manage that?
Uh, Ma'am, for me, I gave 50% to math and 50% to GS now, because I tried approach in last mains, I believe fourth attempt, that I focused more on maths a little bit and I focused less on GS. GS, in the end, that maths had not given me the dividends that I was expecting. My score in maths last year was 256. This year it's
Okay.
277. And the GS score, I believe it was somewhere around 380, I believe. I think 380 or 39. So I thought that I should also be giving due importance to GS this year. So I divided the time in that 50% I'll be doing maths tests and maths analysis, and other 50% for newspapers, current affairs, and daily 1 hour answer writing. So that was the approach that I followed this.
Okay. And this year specifically, like if we see GS to GS jump, you have a brilliant score in GS this year. So what were the improvements that you were looking for this year while preparing between prelims and mains for GS specifically?
Ma'am, for me, the primary important difference that I made this year was understanding the tail words. I didn't used to understand the tail words very much, and generally I used to write the answer without considering the tail word. For example, even if the tail word was examine or discuss or evaluate, my answer would be pretty much the same. So that was one mistake I avoided this year. And secondly, ma'am, I focused on less on data collection, less on more content to be studied. I focused more on dimensions, this more dimensions, and practicing more to complete the paper in the required amount of time. So
Okay,
these
so
are the major.
as against how people go for more and more value addition if they're scoring low in GS, your approach was completely different. Yes, please share more on that as to how were you wanting to build more dimensions as against collecting more facts and throwing more facts into the paper.
Ma'am, so in my 2023 mains, my primary focus was on collecting a lot of data. I used to collect, for example, if the topic was cooperatives per se, I used to collect many data points on that, but in the final answer, I might be able to write only two or three as per the question demands. So I
Yes.
changed the approach a little bit, that I won't be reading too much of data. The data that I'll be reading is going to be around two to three, which I'm going to remember definitely in the final exam. And apart from that, I used to understand the topic on a more holistic perspective, like frameworks. For example, now if the question, let's say, about cooperatives, the stakeholder approach, like who are the members of cooperatives, government as a stakeholder, society as a stakeholder. So my answer became in that direction. So that is one difference that I made. And with respect to understanding the question too, I gave a little more time to understand the question now. Instead of directly jumping into the answer, for understanding the question, I used to take a little bit more time this year. So I used to underline the keyword, what they are asking, what the focus of the question is this time.
Okay, so understand the demand of the question first, and secondly, trying to address all the stakeholders and all the diversities that you can put forward in the GS paper per se, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Uh, Coming to ethics, you have had a brilliant score in ethics this year as well. Given the dip in the marks in ethics that we have been noticing this year, in ethics, you had a score of 119. So, again, what did you do in ethics per se? What was your general preparation strategy for ethics to start with?
This year, ethics was a major contender, ma'am, for me for my preparation. but I believe that optional ethics and essay was I had to improve a lot coming from the previous year. And GS, I'm going to be doing it anyways in the 50-50 division that I made. So for ethics, ma'am, I used to do frameworks similar to previously. And also with respect to particularly understanding the demand of the question, ma'am, I used to mainly just throw in keywords and expect the answer to be right. And I used to complicate answers with more number of keywords without addressing the main demand of the question. For example, if the question was about compassion, I used to write about everything, but I didn't use to elaborate on the topic. So that was one difference that I made this year, ma'am. And ma'am, in your course that you covered about the you had evaluated one paper of mine, ma'am. In that you told about how to write the case studies and general theory answers. In that also, like, so I used to complicate things a lot and not address the basic points. So by trying to write a brilliant answer, I used to forget to write a good answer. So in that sense, ma'am, I worked on it this year.
Okay. Coming to specifically, say, 10 marker questions. In that, code based questions are something that trouble students a lot, where you're specifically asked to, like, what does this code mean to you in the present context, per se? So, how did you make sure that your answers stand out in terms of these questions?
Ma'am, for me, code-based questions, I used to follow it an Bayesian approach, ma'am. Like what the code is trying to say, and divide it into two parts. And I used to write content on that. And finally, I used to add a point of civil servants, ma'am. How does the code impact civil servants? So that was one approach I followed, ma'am. And second approach that I followed was that I used to write the code in the present context and what they mean in general perspective. And I used to add a civil services perspective at the end.
Okay. And also coming to, like, say, for example, the examples that we write in ethics itself. They're usually very general in terms of, say, some examples from history, some examples from repetitive examples of civil servants that we have been using from years and years altogether. I think the scope of showing your personality in ethics, per se, is very high. How did you ensure to do that in your paper?
Yes, ma'am. So, coming to examples, ma'am, in 2024, my examples was pretty repetitive. This year, I made sure that my examples will be unique and something that I can add more value to my papers. And secondly, about personality, ma'am, I used to instead of focusing on the keywords that I did in last year, this year I used to write keywords, but on a lesser scale. The point was to pose my opinion in the answer rather than writing the keywords just and leaving it there. So
Okay, so
this thing.
not writing mechanical answers per se, but showing your personality, your opinion, your argument on that question. Yes, you were saying something.
Yes, ma'am. So these were the major changes that I think I made this year, ma'am. And regarding the code-based questions, last year I used to write it in a short essay format, ma'am. This year I changed it to more point-based format. So maybe that might also had played a role.
Right. Okay, one more thing, Tarun. This year, how the paper had come and the dip in scores that we are seeing in ethics this year, I think it can largely be owed to how UPSC asks, say, one after the other civil servant related questions that are little diversity in them. If you actually sit down to write answers to those three questions, you would be answering it in the same manner. How did you differentiate in those questions? Because your marks truly reflect that.
Ma'am, yes, ma'am. It seems like the questions are a bit similar, ma'am. But for me, when I read the question, there is a little context difference that the UPSC provides in the papers. So I used to focus on the context and with the examples that I had already collected. So there will be some examples that will be suited more to the context rather than some others. So the examples used to be a bit different that I focused on. And some of the
Okay.
examples that I used to use were mythological in some perspective. Some of them were civil services perspective. Some of them were from literary backgrounds. So the examples that I collected was a little bit diverse. So I believe that can make a different view on it.
Okay, so you try to differentiate in terms of the arguments that you're adding specific to that question or the examples that you're adding so that all those questions in continuity, one after the other, do not look just like each other. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
that is good. Coming to the case studies part, Tarun. Again, case studies are in itself very lengthy and very monotonous, having diverse, uh, requiring diverse thought processes one after the other. So, how did you tackle that? What was your general approach for preparing for case studies?
Ma'am, for me, case studies was more to do about practice, ma'am. So I used to practice case studies a lot because the time that is available for case studies becomes a lot less in the final exam conditions.
Yes.
So that was one thing, ma'am. And secondly, with respect to case studies, I used to categorize into different themes. After understanding the case study, so the case studies are generally repetitive in some respects. For example, the case study might be about ethical dilemmas. They can be about civil services values. So based on that, I used to give an intro based on the values persona, and I used to be more verbose. I used to explain what I wanted to write in the paper, and regarding using description before the final course of action with respect to some quotes that I had collected, maybe some Sanskrit shlokas, maybe a quote that we generally use in essays. And I had some quotes and slokas that I had collected, and I used to use them. And conclusion also, I had some pre-made conclusions that I had, so I used to use.
For example, what were the conclusion ideas that you were putting forward to differentiate in your case studies?
Yes, ma'am. For example, shelf life of a lie is very small, so we have to follow the best course of action here. So these kind of slokas, ma'am. I'm currently forgetting because it has been long, but yes,
Yes.
ma'am. These were the slokas.
Okay, so this is how you're trying to differentiate in your case studies. Okay, and coming to, say, for example, what are the options available, or the questions like they ask you, what are the kind of options that are available when you write the wrong option, or what is the right option? In those, when you're trying to explore these options, your analysis of these options, say you're in writing the pros and cons or merits, demerits, your options, your points get a little too repetitive. How did you differentiate there? What was your idea of differentiating there, one point from another?
So, ma'am, with respect to theory that we prepare for ethics, there are a lot of dimensions that can be used, ma'am. So I used to make sure that when I was writing the case studies, I used to go with the flow, like what are the thoughts that are coming. But if there is some different thought that I'm getting, then I used to put it forward, ma'am. So I used to prioritize things. So, and with respect to diversity of case studies, so I believe 2024 was more diverse in case studies, ma'am, as compared to 2025. So in
Definitely.
2024, 2024 was easier because we don't need to compare with respect to case studies. But in 2025, ma'am, I believe that some of the case studies were repetitive in which I wrote. But the differentiation primarily was the priority of points only, ma'am. In some cases, I used to focus on cognitive dissonance because I believe that was a primary issue there. But if the primary issue is not cognitive dissonance, then I used to understand what is the primary issue and I used to focus on it. So
Okay.
in that manner, ma'am, I think yes, ma'am, that was the primary difference I made.
In terms of inculcation of various theories, various philosophies, say from the Indian philosophies, Western philosophies that we focus on, how did you try to inculcate, and do you think that they were important in sort of putting forward your argument or your point in a strong manner in ethics paper?
Yes, ma'am, Indian philosophy and Western philosophy, I used to use elaborately in my papers, ma'am. So those examples also I used to use in case studies a lot, particularly with respect to evaluation of options. And in the final conclusion parts too, I used to use philosophies, ma'am. It's getting back to me now since I forgot means a long time back. But yes, ma'am, I think philosophy has also played a major role in my answers.
Right. Okay, I think we have discussed in detail what you did for ethics, Tarun. Anything that you want to say to the aspirants, having had a long and arduous journey yourself, as to for those especially who couldn't find their names in the final list this year, even after working so hard? I believe many people every year are equally as capable as people who get in the list. So, what would you want to say to them to keep going in this journey until they find their name in the final list?
Ma'am, UPSC journey changes the person. It provides an opportunity for us to understand better about ourselves, understand a little bit more about the society that we live in, and a better world perspective. So, and also after giving the exam, I believe that we get a little better, and that applies both in the examination and also in the also as a better as a person outside of the examination.
Definitely.
So, ma'am, I believe that motivation must be kept on, because for me, I had seen the change in how I write my answers from year to year. 2023, my main score was, I believe, 712, ma'am, and 2024 it was 746, and 2025 it was 830. I did not expect 830, ma'am, but I just focused on improving myself because I know that there was some lacunae that were existing in my preparation. So I believe we should focus on the lacunae and we should keep working on it.
Truly, it also makes you a more hardworking person, makes you more open to critical feedback per se, not just in the papers per se, but in life in general. I think it makes you a better and more knowledgeable human being and a citizen per
Yes,
se.
ma'am.
Great, great, great. Thank you so much for connecting with us, Tarun. This has been a very insightful session. We wish you all the best for your future endeavors.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.